Hi, everyone, and welcome to The X, podcast from inside Silicon Valley about how experience shapes everything, from products to businesses to entire industries. I'm Brian McLean, and I'm here with Demetrius Madrigal. Today, we'll be talking about what happened in tech in 2022, our favorite products that emerged, and our predictions for 2023. This will be our last episode of the year and of the season. Can't believe it. Went by really quick. We already have amazing special guests lined up for next season, and we're excited to share it all with you. All right, so let's get started. Good morning, D. How's it going?
Going pretty good. I actually had to think long and hard about what were going to be my favorite products to talk about this year. But I
Yeah.
think I got some stuff that are pretty game changing.
Yeah, there was a lot of things that came out this year. I actually struggled with that one just a little bit only because I didn't purchase a ton of them. I reviewed them, I researched them, but I didn't really purchase them to get that like deep experience. But I did the ones that I did choose this year are the ones that I actually use and fundamentally shifted my kind of like use cases in my life and stuff. But before we get into that, I know that's super fun and we always do this at the end of every year. Let's do a little review of 2022, kind of what happened in tech and talk about it for a few minutes. So, first off, I mean, crypto, woo, ups and downs and all arounds and crashes and regulations and FTC and this and that. It's been a whirlwind year. We get into the weeds a lot of times when we talk about this stuff, and sometimes when you get in the weeds and your head is down, you're actually missing the bigger picture a little bit. If you lifted your head up a little bit, would you just say that this is just a messy moment, but crypto is going to find its place down the line?
I think the technology, I think blockchain and Web3 absolutely has a future. I'm not so sure about cryptocurrencies,
Yeah.
at least as they exist in their current form. I think one of the reasons why we saw what happened this year is ultimately because of the pandemic. And if you look at what a lot of these coins were doing from a value perspective, including Bitcoin, before the pandemic, that was a little bit more of kind of what you would expect, I think, from the value. And even those were a bit overvalued. I think when we went into the pandemic and people had all of this disposable income that they weren't spending on things they normally spent money on, they would hop on Robinhood and some of these newer platforms and Binance and FTX to some extent and invest. And that kicked up the value. Now that the pandemic is kind of coming to a close, at least from a social standpoint, the virus apparently is still going to be around for who knows how long. Everything from an investment standpoint, at least,
Mm-hmm.
is returning to where it was before. We're
Yeah.
seeing a demand shift. So things are moving out of investment markets. You're seeing that with the stock market. You're seeing it with even with real estate to some extent, and kind of returning to what they were pre-pandemic. And that has caused, because things like meme stocks and cryptos were just going crazy during the pandemic, this feels like a huge crash because it's the inverse of what happened before. And the things like what happened with FTX, and now people are looking at Binance and wondering if their cash reserves are appropriate and so on and so forth. Those were always going to happen with these kind of like quick startup, not fully regulated, centralized exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I think it won't be to the point in which you have either decentralized exchanges with the right safeguards set up, or having it super regulated to the point where it's essentially indistinguishable from using a stock exchange. Then it's going to continue to happen. And once it's done, once you have all that regulation or all these other things, the question will be: will this actually be any different than just buying a stock?
Yeah.
Will there be any advantage or disadvantage? So that, I think, remains to be seen.
Yeah, and that's a good point, right? Is like we're kind of seeing this evolution of this technology, and we saw it in the early web, right? When the dot-com bubble burst and things crashed. It's not like we got rid of websites. It's not like
Yeah.
that didn't lead to apps and mobile and all these other things that occurred. I think there's probably a lot of new innovation that's going to occur over the next couple of years, because a lot of innovators, entrepreneurs are looking at this moment and going, what does this all mean? And then they just start trying things, right? And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times that does lead to some really interesting findings. I mean, the thing is will this FTX problem that you and I have done 2 podcasts on, will it drag out the pain and the discomfort of crypto innovation as it's getting pulled more into basically mainstream media? Because right now, all anyone's talking about is like, oh my gosh, this is like as big as Enron. Like so many people lost, their money. There's going to be lawsuits, so it's going to be a lot of negative news around this space. And I
Sure.
know that entrepreneurs tend to not care about that, and they're like, hey, I'm going to figure out something better, right? But when it comes
Hmm.
to like general sentiment and people wanting to get into crypto, I feel like it's a little bit of a scary moment.
Yeah. Well, I think from a long term perspective, this might actually be helpful for the at least the decentralized web,
Mm-hmm.
for kind of the hype to die down, because I feel like one of the things that happened, and I remember saying this when it did happen, and kind of Bitcoin first took off as an investment class. I
Yeah.
remember thinking this is one of the worst things that could have happened for Bitcoin as a currency, because now it was not super usable previously, and then during all of the ups and downs of it becoming more of an investment class, it was essentially unusable as a currency.
Yes, and I remember us having this conversation, and I remember you saying, like, you were kind of bullish on the idea of a decentralized platform with a digital currency that we can all exchange really easily with one another. And then the second it
Yes.
started turning into like, oh, I'm just going to hoard it for investment purposes, you were like, okay, it's done for me. Like, I'm not interested anymore because it's no longer this utility. Now it just becomes this thing of like the haves and the
Yeah.
have-nots.
Well, I felt like it just became another investment, and there's so many investments out there, and I understand that for people who are really into investments and that's kind of their fun time, then okay, great. Here's a new toy, and I think it quickly became just like all the other toys, other than you can actually execute some of these pump and dumps and kind of get away with it.
Hmm.
But as far as the technology finding utility with everyday users who are not like investors for fun, then it becomes just like it loses its value. And I think a lot of the people who are more serious about developing the technology and leveraging the technology into something that has utility are kind of getting squeezed out, because all of the investment money and all the attention and all the hype is going towards these Doge coins and Bored Ape Yacht Clubs and these kind of hype machines.
Yeah. Within as a parent, within like the parenting group, I'm starting to hear some interesting things, which I thought I would share that's connected to this D actually, and what you just said right there. When you started saying stuff like, Board 8 Yacht Club and all that, right? I always found that as a researcher, there's a canary in the coal mine for every technology. And you and I uncover a lot of those through our company, Metric Lab.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I've been hearing lately is that the younger generation, when I mean younger generation, I mean kids that are like between the ages of like 6 and 16, when their parents want to give them allowances or want to reward them with something, they are turning down cash and they are saying, "Can you please just charge up my Roblox account, or can you get me some credits on Minecraft, or can you get me some coins to spend, on this other game?" And it's really interesting to me because growing up, when I did chores or, I helped out with something and my parents were like, oh, here's a few bucks for you to go play games at the arcade or go do whatever. I wanted money, like actual like fiat
Hmm.
currency. And I'm hearing from a lot of the parents, there's no scientific data that I know of around this. I know this has been discussed before, but I don't have any like research to present everybody. But a lot of them have been saying that their kids are just asking for Roblox coins. Is it a coin? I think it's a token. I think Roblox has a token. Um,
It's some kind of unique. I think it's Robux. I think
Robux.
it's
Yeah,
called.
Robux. Yeah. What do you think about that? Like, it's really interesting, huh?
Well, from the I'm not a parent, but from the parents that I know that who have had kids who are on platforms like Roblox and Fortnite and those kinds of things, they've learned really quickly not to just their kids can't just have carte blanche in order to buy stuff on their own.
Yeah.
They have to, because they will run up obscene bills. So it's you can't just take $10-$20 in cash and convert it into Robux. You have to have some kind of like a credit card, or use some kind of payment platform to do that. And kids can't just do that on their own. They don't have their own credit cards. and they can't just have their parents' credit cards on there because things it leads to bad stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it sounds like all right, this is what they were going to spend their money on anyway because that's where their interests are.
Hmm.
So they're just cutting out the middleman and making it easier for them. So that's all I take away from it without having to talking to any kids who are asking for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that I, I think that when they already have their mind made up, then why not, right? Just go ahead and take that. Like if somebody said, all right, well, would you want cash or an Amazon gift card? I'm like, well, it probably doesn't make any difference for me because at some point I'm going to use the cash on
I
Amazon,
think
right?
that's kind of the point,
There's
though.
other things I could use it for, but at some point it will get used.
But I think that's kind of the point I'm making is like it's interesting of the blending of like, oh, instead of just like the single currency that I can have and then use in many different ways. And I understand the roadblock that you mentioned, but like instead of having the single currency I can use in many different ways, there's currency options. And the kids are like, oh, I'd like this other currency instead because I can use it in a more effective way for the games I play or whatever it is. And it's like, it just feels like there's a shift happening where
Hmm.
the old way of just like delivering someone one thing, like you said, the Amazon gift card versus cash. It's like in the past, like especially when we did research, right? We would always pay people. We'd say, oh, this study pays $150 for 2 hours of your time or whatever it is, right? And now, if you offer those two things, you're right. Like at least half the time, people are like, I'll just take the Amazon gift card, or I'll take the Amex gift card, or whatever it is. And it's like the options are starting to get broader and wider, and now it's like broader and wider with like digital
Yeah.
currencies.
What is kind of ultimately, I don't know that's necessarily the case with all digital currencies. Like if you offered if you just brought in 10 random people and said, here, we're going to give you Robux,
Yeah.
you might get, two or three of them are like, okay, great, Robux. Uh, because it isn't something that you can just go ahead and buy whatever you want like you would with an Amazon gift card. So I
Uh-huh.
think that matters. It depends on, what the kids are into. If they happen to be into Roblox and they don't see themselves, slowing down on their spending or Fortnite or whatever that happens to be, then sure, why not? It just makes it easier. But when it comes to, you can't really do that in general with anybody because you don't know what they're necessarily into.
True.
So
Yeah.
that I think is going to continue to remain.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about this next one. Okay. So I'm going to need you to stand up straight, click your heels 3 times, and say the word metaverse, because this is pretty much what this whole first half of 2022 is all about. And it was kind of led
Yeah.
because of Meta, or Facebook's VR program, and they're pushing so heavily on this metaverse. Now, metaverse, as you've said many, many times, it has been around for 20, 30 years, right? It's like when you're absorbing
Yeah.
yourself into a new world, whether it's a game or anything. But this was the year of elevating the actual hardware potentially associated with connecting into a virtual world. Um, a lot of people have said to me like, "Oh, this is kind of crazy because Meta's spending all this money. Like they're gonna maybe get into the space and have a strong foothold on it." Um, and that may be true, in the long run. But ultimately, to me, the biggest news was the leaked news that Apple might be releasing their own headset, because Apple
Uh,
doesn't really release things that often from a hardware perspective. And so like if
yeah.
they're doing it and Microsoft already has one, I believe, right? And then Meta's doing theirs, is there something we're missing? Because you and I have looked into this space and said, yeah, this is a niche space. Like definitely, yeah, there's people who love this stuff and it's really fun, but they're acting like this is a much bigger space. And
I
I
think
don't know.
Apple. Yeah, I think Apple might be one of the worst companies to get into VR, into Meta, into the metaverse, and there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, I always take on any of these leaks about like, oh, Apple's getting into this crazy
Yeah.
new category. I put it right next to the Apple TV
Yeah.
and the Apple Car, and I think there was an Apple drone at one point, and the Apple Action camera, and these are all
Oh
things that were
yeah.
rumored and they never came out. And then if you look at what the metaverse is from a use case standpoint, it's almost entirely built around social experiences.
Yep.
And then games on top of that. So the two things that Apple has never gotten involved in, they've never been involved in social. They've never really been involved in gaming. In fact, if you're a gamer, for the most part, you're like, all right, if I'm going to have an Apple machine, I also need a PC in order to, or some non-Apple device, such as a console, in order to actually game, because gaming is really limited on Apple.
Yeah.
I don't think as a company they culturally understand these things. This is not what they do. They tend to build these kind of generalist devices that are basically an interactive screen of some kind, whether
Hmm.
it's a phone or a tablet or a computer. I think ultimately, what we're finding is that metaverse is primarily about a social experience, and the companies who are going to be really well at it are going to be companies who are really good at creating social experiences. Right now, that is almost none of the major tech companies.
Hmm.
Facebook used to be it, and they really fell off. Twitter is falling apart. Reddit exists, and I think it is a really interesting kind of platform, but it almost feels a little bit like Wikipedia, a little bit like it exists as almost like a service, not to drive users so
Yeah.
much. And it also is really tainted by stuff from the past. So I think you can look at Imview. I think it has done some interesting things, and they've actually had some success when it comes to releasing some crypto technologies recently when everybody else has been failing.
Mhm.
And they are very social. And I think that is, you're going to look at companies who do well with social. That's why I keep looking at companies like Discord who might do something. And I think, or VR chat is actually doing well too. The, at the same time, I don't think that the primary use case around VR is going to be, or around metaverse is going to be VR.
Yeah.
I think the VR is going to be like the specialist kind of thing where you're either you're taking this special moment to be extra immersive, whether it's for an event or for maybe once a day or something like that. But it needs to ultimately have a very strong desktop and mobile presence so that people can check in on their metaverses whenever they want without it being a major commitment.
Yeah, I think everybody thought that 2022 was going to be the year of the metaverse, right? And ultimately, what it was is like the year of discussion about the metaverse, some
Mm-hmm.
innovation of the metaverse, but not necessarily like a dominant year of the metaverse. I almost feel like we were more dominant on crypto than we were on the metaverse this year.
Well, I mean, changing people's perspectives a little bit. World of Warcraft was making billions of dollars decades ago,
Mhm.
and that is essentially a metaverse. It is is a shared persistent space where people come together and interact with each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that was, alone $1 billion platform like decades ago. So that is something when it comes to perspective as far as what it becomes the metaverse. What we're seeing now is that people are trying to make it a little bit more mainstream, so it's
Mhm.
not just kind of in these MMOs. I mean, Nintendo has a metaverse. If you look at Animal Crossing,
Yep,
I would consider that a metaverse. It's a
absolutely.
place where you're going, developing your space and interacting with each other. I think Final Fantasy 14 won an award for best ongoing game. That is a metaverse with millions of users. So it is a time in which more Sandhill Road types are looking at like how can we make this more mainstream and get everybody and their mom on here as opposed to the 20 and 30 something gamers and weebs. So that I think is something that people are still trying to figure out, but I don't think it's going to be a Google or an Apple or an Amazon who is going to figure it out because that's just not their culture as
Well,
companies.
I think we always try to single one company out as being the leader in the space, but this space feels more like if you're going to have an immersive experience like a VR headset, then yes, there might be a hardware company that makes the best hardware. But then you can't necessarily be the same company. It's very hard, I should say, to be the same company that spends all their time and resources building that type of hardware that also develops, World of Warcraft, right? It's like they're two different things. I feel like the metaverse experience is probably going to be kind of like the PC experience of like getting all the best components, bringing them together, and creating your own.
Ultimately, I think what it comes down to is social, and we'll get to this a little bit. Is it is ultimately an evolution of the social experience, and social is in so much flux right now that it is not. It kind of feels as though none of the major players right now are going to be the ones who are going to make this a truly mainstream product.
Yeah. And so maybe that's the theme of 2022 is more like bringing it to light and realizing what a lot of the bigger companies have not succeeded at in this space and what is to come down the pipeline for them. But like since you mentioned social, let's just jump down to social and talk about it for a second. in 2022, social was flipped upside down because
Yeah.
no one knew what was going to happen with Twitter. TikTok ended up really killing it and pretty much driving everyone else below them. And then
Yeah.
eventually Twitter got sold and now it's kind of fallen apart. We don't know what's going to happen with it. I'm kind of like over social. Like, not that I was ever like super into it, but I kind of got to this point the other day where I was thinking about it and I was like, I don't know that like it matters as much as it did like 3 or 4 years ago. What all these people that, let's say, I'm interested in following and stuff are thinking about every day. It almost feels like I might want to check in and be like, oh, I like Adam Grant, for example, right?
Mhm.
The researcher, right? And so I was like, maybe if I check in once a week and just see what he's posting about like certain research he's doing or someone else, but I'm not as interested in like this day-to-day interaction anymore. And I don't know if other people feel
Mhm.
that way, but I just feel like it's all like getting all mixed up now and it's not going to even remotely look the same 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah, I feel like we're in a hardcore changing of the guard. So you look at the two biggest players that you can think of. Twitter, Elon Musk came in and he's imposing his ideology on it. And he's basically going to be turning that thing into Parler much faster than I thought he was going to the point where like I would be surprised if we get to the end of 2023 and it's still on the App Store and Play Store. So the way that things are going. So if he keeps going, I think that is going to be a huge issue for that platform. But it feels as though his model is let's shrink it down. And when you shrink down the costs associated, you're pretty much going to shrink the user base.
Mhm.
And a lot of the data we're seeing is that they are shrinking their user base. They're having fewer people logging in. He's saying that he is touting that they're having fewer impressions on like hate speech and things like that.
Mhm.
But other data is showing that there's more hate speech on the platform. So what that says to me is that there's just fewer people on the platform in order to generate impressions.
Yeah.
So those two things can absolutely both be true at the same time. On the other side of things, you look at Facebook, and they're losing users consistently. It feels
Totally.
like Facebook itself is now a boomer platform. Their stock price is, well, I think, like $120 last I looked. Instagram still makes money for them, but it feels to me like Instagram is slowly like just degrading. Like I keep getting content served up to me that I didn't ask for, and every single moment it feels like I can't go 3 posts without getting inundated with ads.
Yeah.
So it's still acceptable for now, but it's creating this weakness. It's keep leaving the door open for sure. And then TikTok is doing great as far as user acquisition and getting impressions and all those things, but it might be getting banned in the United States
Mhm.
because
Yep.
of all the security issues. So it feels to me, Hive Social, I see a lot of people going to that. People were talking about Mastodon for a while. And this is one of the issues I have with Web3 as it is now, is just the usability behind it is such a pain because in order to establish kind of this distributed processing aspect of things with appropriate security, it slows everything down.
Mhm.
So you have to get on a waiting list to get into certain Mastodon channels, and those channels are you have to figure out which one to get into and who's in what, and it just creates a weird experience. Hive Social's out there. It's new. It's only on mobile for now. I think it also needs to be on desktop because I'm not ready to commit to putting it on my phone yet. But I think somebody's going to step in and they're going to create an experience that is not based around some ideology. Like, who wants to go to a Christmas party where somebody's just like, all right, well, we're going to be having all of these political ideologies about who can do what and whatnot. And I want to go to a party where it's like, all right, we're going to curate a good experience for you. Here's some great music. Here's some great food. Here's some great people. Have fun, as opposed to you go somewhere and it's like, no, everybody can play all their music at the same time. And it doesn't matter if the music is terrible or hateful or whatever it is. And it's not even one song playing at the same time. Everybody brings their own music sound system. They're playing it all at once. And that, I feel like, is kind of what most social has become right now.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that it's very hard to predict because the social conversations that are occurring and the needs and all that kind of stuff, they're shifting now. If you look at the amount of attention people have, throughout the day, they seem to be focusing a lot of their attention now on TikTok, short videos, things like that. And it seems to be less on long form and stuff like that. So like even from the perspective of like absorption, human absorption of content, it seems to be, like you said, in a just a moment of change. So this will be
Mhm.
exciting one basically to watch. And then the last thing that I feel like 2022 really did was it brought to light a lot about what the biotech community is doing and their advancements in this space. I feel like for the longest time people were down on biotech, but I would say that one of the good things that happened was when COVID kind of hit and they had to step up and kind of develop some solutions to this. It opened up new technologies that are kind of expanding in new ways. And mRNA has been around for a long time. The one that's used to create the current vaccine. I mean, they've been
Mhm.
experimenting with it for like 20 years or something. But the reality is that it accelerated the use of it for other types of issues. And I was just reading
Yes.
the other day, I'm really excited that they have mRNA vaccines that are being developed that currently show to be extremely effective in their small trials for curing a lot of cancers. And so one of the things I remember being leaked that I heard was that the CEO of Moderna was telling a bunch of people at a conference or something like, in 10 years time, like the majority of the major cancers will probably be gone. Like you could get a vaccine for them, basically is what he was saying. I mean, there's no guarantees of that, but they're all in trials right now and they're figuring that stuff out. Um, and then also a couple other things within this space, and then we'll talk about it. Is also at-home diagnostics have gotten really, really good. A while back, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I remember seeing those flu tests at home and stuff. And I think they were kind of expensive, and you could get a test and see if you have the flu. But now with companies like Q Health, which I have one, and I really, really like it a lot. It's like you could do a simple swab, plug it in, it connects to your smartphone, and then it could tell you if you have COVID or not. And they're expanding
Mhm.
that to flu and all kinds of other things. So the idea is that you would do your diagnostics at home, and then you would submit those results to your doctor, and then they would tell you how to manage them instead of you actually taking your sickness into the hospital, which I think is
Yeah.
such a cool mission. And then the final one is wastewater analysis. This one kind of came out of the blue. I hadn't heard about this. And once COVID hit, they started studying the wastewater, and they could do these calculations and determine how much of the COVID virus is in the wastewater. So instead of like relying on people to say like, "Oh, I have COVID," you could just check the wastewater and tell you if it's medium, high, or low in your community. Well, they could do this for all the different types of viruses that are out there, and it gives us a much better look at just what's happening, especially during these winter months when there's a lot of stuff floating around, like the flu and RSV and all this type of stuff. But it's really cool technology to be able to have these dashboards of what's available. So, in the realm of like biotech, I feel like they kind of hit a home run in 2022 and really pushed things forward from my perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the things when you look at biotech and they're making rapid advances, and this is great. I think there's plenty of other things that need to happen within the healthcare area. Just the limitations right now on the availability of healthcare is rather startling. But this mRNA technology, as it's we were reading a few years ago about kind of immunology approaches for treating cancer and reactivating T cells in order to attack specific cancer cells in order to get rid of them. That is potentially game changing for sure. And the fact that it can also be used for many, many more different kinds of diseases. I think that there was some talk about an AIDS vaccine coming around. Uh, all of those technologies, the diagnostics, I look at the diagnostics and I think to myself that this is something that was actually pushed forward by the huge Theranos debacle,
Yeah.
where somebody realized, all right, well, there is a huge market for, there's a pain point right now with access to healthcare and diagnostics. This is solvable by through in-home means. The value proposition was validated by Theranos, even though ended up being kind of a fraudulent scam, and all those people are going to prison. It showed that there was a need for it, and there was a huge need for it.
Yeah.
So it allowed people to step in and say, okay, we're going to go ahead and do this. And there, for certain things like tracking antibodies in the blood, we're finding that those are things that can very well be done at home.
Yeah.
And so why not? And it takes some of the load off of what doctors and medical labs and so on need to do. So it's something that I think one of the ways in which I tend to look at where technology is going to go in the future is whether or not there is an economic incentive for it to happen,
Hmm.
which is why I think for at home testing and some of these technologies, there's so much economic incentive in order for it to make it happen, that it's the pressure on it is just going to push it forward and ultimately make it much more common that you're just going to have a device or a series of devices in your home that you can use to check for the flu, or you can check for COVID, or you can maybe download a new testing profile or something,
Hmm.
or add on some new piece of hardware and test for a new disease that's coming out and just have it at home and ready to go.
It's unbelievable. The fact that like we have a thermometer, right? And then we have medications to make us feel better for not feeling well. And now we have some device that can swab our nose or what or throat and be like, "Oh, you have strep." And you're like, "Okay, great."
Mhm.
And then you could just get a prescription for it. Like that's fantastic. I think we've all wanted that for a really long time. And I also heard the other day they now have this blood test. I guess it's in the very early stages, but it's apparently available, that can detect whether you have. I don't know how it does it specifically, to be honest, but it could tell you up to it's like 128 or something potential cancers. And so
Mhm.
by getting this blood test, if it even picks up one of them, you could start the process of treatment before there's any symptoms at all, before it's even detectable by previous technology. And you can start
Interesting.
looking
I'd
at it, right?
like to know more about that.
Yeah, me too. And that's why I heard about it. And they were just saying it's a game changer because if you go in and you get a blood test and it comes back and it says of these 128, you have no markers at all for that,
Mhm.
then there's a good chance you're kind of good to go for a long period of time or whatever it is. And what that actually means for society. So I don't know all the details about it, but I think this could even be an entire episode, which would be really fun to talk about it and see how it works.
Oh yeah.
But let's switch gears here and move on to robotics. So I felt like there was a huge movement this year in 2022 with Tesla releasing its robot, which a lot of robotics experts said that they were pretty impressed with how quickly they were able to build a very basic robot that could do basic functions. I saw a lot of food service automation, which I that's a kind of a bummer because it kills a lot of jobs, but it's also really interesting to see that certain jobs can be automated so smoothly with these robotic arms. As well as there are some restaurants. There's even one in San Francisco that doesn't even have any humans that work there, which is interesting. And then I really like this solar array navigation one. So when you have solar panels, whether they be, let's say, in your large backyard, or if they're in this huge area because you're powering an entire plant or something like that, that they have these little robots that are mounted to these frames and they slide around and they basically shift the solar panels to constantly be in the most optimal location. I feel like there's a lot of advancement in robotics. I also saw one which is really interesting that helps pick fruit, and it would basically grab the tree, shake the tree, and then find the fruit and pull it off. And it's a very slow progression because robotics is very challenging. But in 2022 in particular, I saw a lot of these things become commercialized and be
Mhm.
used at least in a small way. And so I think there was definitely a shift into the Jetsons this year.
I think robotics are very interesting. You missed one of the ones that we were keeping an eye on, which was the Amazon released their little robot.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right,
They're
that's right.
called.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That one as well. That's a consumer one. Yeah, I didn't mention a consumer one there, but yeah, that too, right? It's like everyone's getting into this space.
Yeah, Astra, which you mentioned the Jetsons, and now they have a household robot called Astra, just like the Jetsons dog. I think it's a very interesting area. Is one of the things where I just mentioned previously about where the economic pressure is, and this is an area in which, by making these investments, people can reduce their overall costs. Right. So you mentioned the fruit picking robot. So if you can have a robot that can do things like pick fruit or vegetables or what have you, and reduce the cost for human labor, there's economic pressure to do that, and there's going to be social consequences one way or the other, and it's up to us as a society to figure out what we should do with that.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is there is economic pressure in order to reduce those costs. One of the things that I look at is, and we've been looking at this for a long time, and I think it will eventually happen, is more delivery drones.
Yep.
We see so many delivery trucks, especially for last mile out on the road, and they're taking up space, and they can be terrible, nasty jobs. We had a FedEx driver, I think, who murdered someone not too long ago.
Oh, geez.
So um, that's been in the news recently. I think there is economic pressure in order to relieve that, in order to have fewer of those trucks on the roads, fewer of those drivers on the road, more specialized for maybe more sensitive or heavy or fragile products, and a lot of the things that are, the daily things like of buying some new shampoo and conditioner. There's no reason why you can't have just like a little four-wheeled sidewalk bot come and drop it off, or a flying drone drop it off. And I think that ultimately there's a matter of time before that actually happens.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons is it will save a lot of money for within the shipping industry, and it'll also free up a lot of traffic on the roads.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there's a lot in this space. I mean, we could talk forever about the opportunities and the things that are available, but I definitely saw a lot of progression in 2022, and I
Yeah.
just feel like it's not stopping.
It did feel as though in 2022 there was a setback for self-driving cars, and I think that ultimately comes from kind of Tesla getting a little bit ahead of themselves when
Mhm.
it comes to kind of marketing what their software could do. I think it'll come eventually, but we're seeing, like, I saw a video where a Tesla was parking itself and it just hit the gas and took off at high speed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that need to get figured out there. I think maybe some setbacks happened in 2022, but it will eventually get
I
there.
think so too. And then the last one that I had here on the list was AI. I mean, man, the amount of deep fakes I watched that made me laugh so hard, like the ones with Tom Cruise and stuff. But they're looking really, really good. And so a lot of artificial intelligence advancements have happened. If you look at Chat GPT, that one's kind of crazy. I mean, it's writing amazing marketing copy. Like you can go in and use it. I don't know if you've tried it yet, D, but it's crazy good.
One thing that stood out for me is kind of the AI art that's coming out.
Yes.
Because honestly, I look at some of this art and I'm just like, even like years ago, Google's Deep Dream was doing some AI art, and I was like, hey, you know what? This is actually pretty good. I'd put some of this stuff up on my walls. I feel like it's one of those things where especially when it comes to modern art and some of the even more classical art styles, there's not a lot of reason why an AI couldn't do this. I think there are things that are a little bit different when it's coming from an actual human, but when you're just talking about the application of color theory and shapes and doing those things, it's really impressive what they're able to do. And you're probably going to see them start writing like screenplays and things at some point.
Yeah.
Uh, Even you mentioned the deepfakes. I'm seeing deepfake technology being used a lot for in the movies, for things like, well, de aging, Mark Hamill, so you can play Luke Skywalker again. Some of them are using deepfake technologies in order to make that happen, and it's actually in some ways an improvement over some things that we've seen before, like The Irishman, which was just had a terrible implementation of the technology.
Yeah, the ones that I actually am really impressed with, D, is the AI trainers. Have you seen these? So you can go in and provide a whole bunch of content to them, and then it'll
Mm-hmm.
create a person. Like this person doesn't exist. That it
Mm-hmm.
looks very real, but it's not a real person. That maybe someone in the world looks like them, but it was created by this company. And this person will deliver the trainings for you within your company. So, for example, let's say we're going to do training on I don't know, like human resources stuff, like sexual harassment or anything like that. Someone will pop on the screen and be like, "Hey, Brian, good morning. How are you?" Blah, blah, and they'll start giving this full training, and it's not a real person. And you can interact with this trainer, and they can help educate you and all that kind of good stuff. And it's really really cool because I was thinking about even our stuff and the educational stuff that we want to put out or have put out. Having somebody who's not us be and have it constantly change and be a different person, and have it delivered for large groups, small groups, things around the world and stuff like that could help spread kind of the stuff that we've learned in research and that kind of stuff to a
Hmm.
broader community, because there's only two of us. We can only do it so many times, right? And so
Yeah.
it's really good, like some of the stuff. And I've also heard that it's already been implemented at a lot of big companies.
Well, that's really interesting because I feel as though some of the corporate training stuff, especially when you're a new hire and you're going through all the trainings that they give you from HR, that is an area where there is tremendous opportunity for improvement
Oh
because the
yeah.
user
Oh
experience
yeah.
currently is just an issue. I'll say that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's switch over to our last topic of the day, which is our favorite products of 2022. Drum roll. All right. So D and I picked our favorite products. We do this every year. We just kind of go back and forth. D, what do you want to do? Flip a coin, see who goes first?
Why don't you go
You want me
first?
to go first? Okay. So I picked a total of four this year. How many did you pick? One, two.
I also picked
You
four
picked.
because I saw that you picked
Oh,
four.
got it. Okay, great. So you picked four. So this one we just talked about, and this is kind of my number one, was the Q Health tester for COVID, and it just helped us in so many cases because we wanted to go visit my wife's grandmother who's 100, and we wanted to make sure that everyone was safe. And so being able to swab our nose, stick it in the machine runs, has a 98.7% accuracy. It's kind of like a PCR tester. It's like we knew everyone was safe, and you can kind of enter the environment, have a really, really good time, and peace of mind when around people. And from a use case perspective, it it's just phenomenal because, like, I was telling someone the other day, when COVID first began, we had nothing. We had no testing at all, right? Then it went to you can go to the hospital and they have the ability to get tested. And you're like, okay, great. And I had to do that actually because I went for an exam and they were like, oh, we need you to have a COVID tested. And I was like, oh, okay. Then after that, it was, oh, you go to this facility that's like parked over at the mall or something and you get your test and then you wait 3 days for a result. Sometimes you get it in like 2 days and you're like, woohoo. Now it's just sitting in your house and that's it. You just test yourself and move on with your life. And so, because it helped us so much, and there were so many use cases that came up throughout the year where we wanted to use this so that we can safely do things with anyone. I mean, they always say like people who are at risk. I don't think anybody wants COVID. So we just use it all the time in order to make everyone feel comfortable and safe, since we have a child in school and we're kind of out and about a little bit as well. So that was my first one. I love it. I think it's a great product. I can't wait to see it expand and be used in all kinds of other areas like the flu and other things that could potentially, make us sick.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic concept. And again, I mentioned before that it feels as though the Theranos debacle helped push a lot of these products over the finish line and to get them made. I think it'd be helpful and it's going to be good for the health and society in general. If we can normalize potentially either calling in sick and not going to work when you're sick, or at least wearing masks when you're sick, like they do in Asia, then it will help tremendously for everybody's finances, for everybody's health, for everybody's mental health, everything across the board.
Awesome. All right. So what do you got?
All right, my number one is actually a streaming show. This is a Netflix show, and I chose it. It actually came out at the end of 2021, but I didn't get to it until 2022, so I'm talking about it
Uh
now.
huh.
And it did something that nothing has ever done before, and it was a adaptation of a video game that was very successful and actually very high quality, and it's called Arcane. Um, and if anybody who's into gaming or animation or anything, you probably already know about Arcane. And if you haven't seen it, it is a must see. It's based on League of Legends, and I've never ever played a League of Legends game in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's a MOBA. It's a multiplayer online battle arena type of game. But this show came out. It was beautifully made, incredibly well written, fantastic characters, super well acted. The story's fantastic. It does leave you a bit of a cliffhanger, but it won several Emmys, and it is currently rated a 9.0 on IMDb. It's the top 25 uh, TV show in history on IMDb. So it is. Let me take a look. It is ahead of The Office and Firefly on IMDb, and it's got 100% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
It is the first true prestige video game adaptation, and it's not just another Lara Croft Tomb Raider terrible kind of just putting something out there because people will pay for it. I feel like this broke new ground. And anybody out there who hasn't seen it, absolutely see it. I watched it, knew nothing about League of Legends, absolutely loved it. My girlfriend, she watched it, doesn't play games at all, absolutely loved it. Everybody, I've never talked to a single human being who saw this and wasn't blown away.
Wow. That's a big promotion right there. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to check it out because I have not heard of it, nor have I actually seen it.
I will send you some links. I'm certain I have told you about it before.
I'm sure you mentioned it, but you and I share like so much stuff with each other back and forth. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can't keep up with everything that we're always like chatting.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, people have told me about plenty of things that I still need to watch that I haven't gotten around to watching yet. So
Yeah. Awesome. Well,
that happens. But Arcane is not just good; it is a game changer. And I mean, right now it is the best video game adaptation. It took over the crown from Castlevania, which is also great. We'll see what happens when the new Last of Us show comes out. That's going to be the new challenger for the best video game adaptation.
awesome. All right. All right. So mine, you're gonna laugh when you hear this one. Um,
Oh yeah,
Mine is the Ninja Toaster. All right. So here's the deal. Let me frame this up because you're like, what is going on right now? Okay. So every time we don't have a toaster oven here or
so like
anything like that.
toast things with shrieking or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. First of all, I
What
love
do
the
you like?
name. There's nothing better than anything with ninja in front of it. They're like, you can have the ninja phone. I'll be like, oh, I'll take the ninja phone. Like that's just how my brain works, right? Um, so we didn't have a toaster oven, and every morning you make toast, eggs, whatever it is you want to make or whatever. We're constantly using the oven, right? And it's this huge thing. And so you have to heat up the oven, and then you got to throw your toast in and all that stuff. It just takes forever. And so finally, we were like, we should get
It's
something
very energy inefficient too, by the way.
very energy inefficient, completely inefficient, especially when you're trying to get out of the house at like 6 something in the morning and everyone's trying to eat and stuff like that. So we started looking at regular toasters, and then my wife was doing some research and she was like, dude, this Ninja toaster gets amazing reviews. And I was like, dude, you had me sold at Ninja. I'll take it. So, anyways, I read the reviews and they were pretty game changing reviews. And what's really, really cool about it, and this is what really changed things for us, is it's not just a toaster. You can flip it on its side and it becomes a mini oven. So it has this little tray that you pull out and you could put anything you want in there from, let's say, 4 little cookies and slide them in there. Boom, you instantly have cookies. If you have, dough that's pre-made or something, right? We put sometimes vegetables in there. If my son and I are home alone, then I'll pretty much cook everything on this little mini Ninja toaster. I don't touch anything else in the kitchen, and I can make dinner really quickly. It's super efficient. It also has a function for like if you're going to do like a bagel, like a one-sided bake versus two-sided. It has what is that? The broil function built into it. It has all these things built into this tiny little toaster. And it has really helped us out a lot. It has not only kept our kitchen cleaner, we use less energy, and it allows us to create our meals a lot faster. So I was really impressed with it. We use it every single day. And for that reason, it had to be my number two.
Yeah, my mom actually has a version of this. It doesn't have the little toaster one. She has a Ninja toaster oven
Uh-huh.
that is bigger than the Ninja toaster, but it also flips up just for storage,
Okay.
and she really likes it.
Yeah.
Again, because she doesn't always want to use her full blown toaster or her full blown oven. This is ultimately kind of could potentially, I don't know. So as you know, Christine, my partner, she's a chef. So what devices make it into our kitchen kind of have to meet her standards.
Sure. Yeah.
And she's a bit of a traditionalist. So like she has her toaster oven that just does toaster oven things, and I've have wanted to have just a regular toaster in the kitchen for a while. And it's just like, oh, we just use a toaster oven. I'm like, that takes too long. But I can see that, like I'm looking at it right now. It looks really cool.
Yeah.
It
It
does,
works really
and the
well.
fact that you can just use the flip it on its side and use it as a pizza oven is pretty cool.
Oh, it's crazy. Like it's awesome. And the fact that they could build everything into there and it works really efficiently and that kind of stuff. Yeah. It was my number two because of that. And it was
Yeah.
it's been one of those things that like if you used to always tell me like let's analyze behavior versus just what you like, right? I think you said that
Hmm.
on the first year. And the reality is that my behavior has shifted dramatically because of the Ninja Toaster.
Yeah.
Even though I use the Q Health tester a lot, and that has really helped keep us safe, especially when interacting with other people. I don't use it all the time. It's not daily. It's not multiple times per day. It's like once every
Yeah.
couple of weeks. I'll be like, oh, we're gonna do this thing. We should probably test ourselves, right? So like the Ninja Toaster has a greater effect on my daily behavior than any of the things that I picked on my list this year.
Well, it's really interesting. If you're out there and you're listening to this, go take a look at it. It's a really interesting kind of innovative approach to something that has been around for a long time. It doesn't involve any kind of crazy technology. It's one of those things you look at it and you just think to yourself, why didn't anybody do this before?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like such a no brainer now that I see it.
Yeah. All right. What do we got for yours? Number two.
All right. So in 2022, I found myself kind of re-engaging with playing music, and I was wanted to get back into. I've played piano for a long time. I started learning guitar and then kind of fell off. So I wanted to get back into playing guitar. And one of the websites that I found for just getting any kind of musical or audio equipment in general was a website called Sweetwater. And one of the great things about Sweetwater is their user experience around purchasing and getting support for anything that you get through the website is absolutely unprecedented. I bought a guitar on there. I bought an Epiphone SG. It was kind of a slight step up from a starter electric guitar, but they have a sales engineer who communicates with you exactly what to expect. They have a 55-point inspection, which is a big thing for musical instruments because there's so much variability when you're dealing with wood producing sound, for example, that in the old days, it would be kind of unthinkable to buy something sight unseen. You'd have to go there, you'd have to play it, you'd have to feel it, you'd have to see what it's like. They do so much of that on their side, and they give you support. If you have a problem, you can send it back. They'll do, if you're getting a guitar, you can get a setup, and I had a bone nut installed instead of the plastic nut that it came with before it was even sent to me, and it showed up in perfect playing condition. Even when I went back and just ordered a new guitar strap, the same sales engineer who had worked with me for on the guitar also reached out to me about a guitar strap. I got assigned to a sales engineer, and that sales engineer has been my consistent contact when working with Sweetwater throughout multiple purchases throughout the year. And I think it shows the potential for some specialization in e-commerce. Not everybody needs to be just the absolute generalist like Amazon. From an e-commerce perspective, you can focus on something that might be a little bit long tail, that's still a huge market like musical instruments, and provide an elevated user experience and really open up some new and better experiences for users. It's kind of what I felt with Chewy, where Chewy provides a great experience when it comes to pet
It does,
products.
yeah.
But I feel like with musical instruments, it's just people are so finicky and they need to know exactly what they're getting and they need to feel it and all of those things that it's kind of game changing to the point where now it's like you can feel confident getting this instrument from a website, which I think is absolutely fantastic.
That is kind of like the next evolution of e-commerce because musical instruments in general are it's tough. I mean, unless you're
Yeah.
like a very, very detail oriented person who has done tons of research and really understands all these instruments, to be able to like take them apart, figure out what you need, what damage can occur if somebody abuses it too much, and then they're selling it. Like there's so many pieces of it. I remember when I was trying to learn bass, and I got to the
Mhm.
point where I was like, I just need to buy my bass guitar brand new. I need to buy everything brand new. That way, if something doesn't work, I can just return it. Like that was literally my thought in
Yeah.
my head. And you're basically telling me that doesn't have to be the case anymore.
Well, the interesting thing, especially when you're talking about acoustic instruments,
Yeah.
uh, the way in which it's not like buying a car or a laptop or something like that, where you buy one model and you know exactly what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You can get one model of a Taylor or Martin guitar and the same model of that same guitar, and they can feel different and they can play different. So it's one of those things where you're kind of establishing, like, if you go on to Sweetwater and you're getting a guitar, for example, because that's what I bought. There's plenty of other things you can get, microphones and studio monitors and all these other kinds of things on there. You can buy all kinds of stuff on there. They will tell you the exact serial number of which one, so that you can select the exact one. You can look at the exact wood grain.
Whoa.
They'll tell you the weight on it. When you buy it, they put through an inspection, so they check the frets, they check the nut, they check the relief, and do all these things to make sure that when it shows up to your house, that it's a minimum level of playing experience to get started. And that's something that the amount of expense that probably goes into making that happen. And I paid for the setup, so that was like an extra service, but they do the inspection and the pictures and the serial number and selecting the exact weight. That's all included in the cost.
Mm.
There's no extra cost for any of that.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Like that's I never even heard of this before. And you and I are pretty dialed into this stuff. So, was this something that you heard of from someone else, or just through your research of trying to find a place?
Well, I already knew about Sweetwater because I'm kind of into audio stuff. Previously, like I've always been into music, love music. I met my partner on basically what is what we would now look at as a music focused metaverse. But I was into getting nice microphones and headphones and speakers and stuff before. And Sweetwater is a great place for that, for any kind of like production level stuff.
Hmm.
Even if you're using if you're getting an XLR microphone like a Shure and you need an audio interface, it's a great place for it. So that's where I kind of heard about it, and then just through actually, I think I heard about it through a YouTube channel, Charlie's Guitar Show, which he likes to do really in-depth reviews of a variety of different guitars. But he partners with Sweetwater, and he announced on there like, here's the 55-point inspection, and you can pick the exact guitar you want. So don't want the 8-pound guitar and you want a 6-pound guitar in order to make sure that it's not too heavy for you. Then you can pick the exact unit that you want. You can pick
Hmm.
the exact wood grain on it, so it'll look exactly how you want it to.
That's fantastic, man. That's super cool to hear. I'll have to check that one out. Um, all right, let's head on to the third. So my third one is actually an interesting one. It's the over-the-counter hearing aids that have come out. So I don't think my dad would mind me saying that he, at his age, needs a hearing aid now. He can hear, but he has lost some of the higher end tones and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
what that actually led me to doing was a ton of research on over the counter hearing aids. And this is a complex area. I think everybody kind of pretends that this is like going to like CVS and getting some eyeglasses. Um, y- you could buy these things, but you have to tune them and you have to get used to them and you have to figure out. There's a lot of little
Mm-hmm.
things that you don't even think about that come up. But um, I was looking at the landscape, and there's like three or four that currently exist in the market, and they range from super cheap, a couple $100 up to like $2,000. But they've come a long way, and I'm really impressed with the smartphone interfaces and what they're
Mm-hmm.
able to do, and also the size of them. So the ones my dad got are so tiny that it has to have a little tiny piece of like rubber that hangs out of your ear so you can pull it out at the end of the day
Mm-hmm.
when you're not using them because they're so small. And they could be tuned with your smart device. They have really amazing settings where you could say like, oh, I'm going to switch to the setting because I'm about to be at a cocktail party versus I'm at a football game versus I'm having a one-on-one discussion. Really impressed with where it's going. I think it has a long way to go in the sense that there's so many different ways that we could tune them for so many different human beings. They have so many different needs. But what we've been able to achieve in 2022 of getting these things on the shelf so people can put something in their ear and start hearing again is fantastic. And I've had two or three friends tell me that their parents are looking into it, and I gave them some references and stuff. But the general category of over the counter hearing aids heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting space. A lot of the audio stuff that I'm into, especially if you were in ear stuff, they're using all the same technology. They're called balanced armatures, and they're very small. And with small drivers like that, they're very good at handling high
Mm-hmm.
frequencies, and they're very low power also. And then you take that high frequencies are where almost all age related or like just hearing damage related hearing loss occurs. People who get older, they tend to lose the high frequencies. So that being predictable, it can kind of be like reading glasses to some extent. It's not the same as you said, but it's a little bit predictable what frequencies you're going to lose.
Hmm.
And then for that reason, you can do the calibration through some work, but you don't necessarily need a prescription in that way.
Yeah. And what we
The
learned from
technology's
the
gotten
what we
great.
kind of learned from the experience is that like there's a lot of little things that come up. Like for example, like oh, I can hear a
Mhm.
little bit of an echo, or it's a little too loud, or it's a little too quiet in these situations. And there's a lot of fine tuning that happens, but it's getting better and better. And as long
Yeah,
as I see progression, I'm always kind of happy with the category in the space. But the fact that we can take a smartphone in our pocket, connect it to this tiny little device, put it in our ears, and suddenly something that is failing that cannot be fixed through a medical procedure now is essentially fixed. And I think that's
yeah.
awesome.
And I think that the explosion of the wireless earbud market, especially when you start looking at AirPods, but there's other ones that are competing with that are using a lot of the same
Mhm.
technologies. It's really driving this forward by providing, especially the wireless implementation. So that having that wireless implementation, the connection with your phone, is continuing to get better. We're looking at I think Qualcomm announced lossless audio coming with the next generation of Bluetooth devices. So this is it's a win for everybody, and I think that we're going to continue to see better and better devices come out, and they're going to get cheaper. My mom uses hearing aids also sometimes when I can get her to wear it, and my aunt and so on, and plenty of other people. So this is, I think, a huge win across the board.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What was your third?
My third is another uh, uh, music instrument based marketplace. Essentially, it's a site called Reverb.
Hmm.
So where Sweetwater was basically the kind of Amazon or Chewy for musical instruments, Reverb is more like the eBay. It's a specialist e-commerce website that focuses on music instruments and electronics, so amps and microphones and monitors, the same way that Reverb does. But you go on there, and anybody who wants to sell their old guitar or their old ukulele or their old piano or keyboard, they can post it on there. And they have such a strong social component to it that you can go on there and look at like a Fender, Japanese Fender from 1985,
Uh-huh.
and you can get people reviewing that product and tell you what they like about it and what they dislike
That's
about it
so
from a user
cool. That
perspective.
is so cool.
It is so well done. You can go on there and buy $10,000, $50,000. You could probably buy $100,000 guitar from the 50s on there because people post so much stuff. And a lot of these things are coming from people who own stores, like the Chicago Music Exchange is a legendary store, and they have a presence on Reverb.
Mhm.
Uh, you can go out there, and if you're looking for, I've heard of people go on there and find what they call their birthday guitar, which is a guitar that was manufactured on the day that they were born,
Okay.
and you can find that out by looking at the serial number. It'll tell you like what date it was produced. It and then the social elements of it, where like I feel like eBay is very impersonal. You might have some communication with the seller, but on Reverb, people will talk about, I love this product, but here's an issue you need to know about. And the communication between them is so powerful that I think it really provides a different model for how kind of these secondary marketplaces can really work.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, I think for the longest time, people thought nobody can compete with eBay. But I think where the
Hmm.
competition occurs is through these long tail areas, right? Like
Yeah.
musical instruments or cars and stuff like that. And then I know that eBay has their sections and stuff like that, but you go a layer deeper, like you're describing, where it's like you have these amazing
Hmm.
reviews of this exact instrument and that kind of stuff. People love that stuff, especially nowadays, and I'm really excited to hear that because I know that they have sites that are emerging for other categories as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, I mean, again, it's called Reverb. If you're out there, if you're interested in anything related to this, check it out. It's a great place to get some stuff. I've seen Martin guitars for a couple $100 on there, which is kind of crazy. I think the cheapest one you can buy new is like $900 or so.
Hmm.
Um, but the amount of knowledge that is on that site is tremendous, and it's something that you can't get on somewhere like Amazon, where it's just you get a review based on somebody's experience owning something for a few days. On here, on this site, you get deep knowledge sometimes from people who are extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So our last one of 2022 for me is a general category again, and that is electric bikes. And I'm going to explain why. So I know electric bikes have been around for a couple of years, probably been around for 10 years at this point. But the fact is they are cheaper, they are faster, and they are doing something I think is amazing. They are getting people out that would have normally never gotten out on a trail or up a mountain or on a long distance ride on the coast. I am seeing more people over the age of probably 65 riding electric bikes all around town, all up and down the hills, all over the place, having a great time because the electric bike is giving them that little extra aid that gets them out having a great time. Now, I know that I don't want to get any emails from anybody. Um, there is a strong community of people that are so angry that uh, mountain bikers are using electric mountain bikes up and down the hills and stuff. You know what? Get over it. Here's the deal. If you want to use your regular mountain bike, use it. I don't use an electric mountain bike. I ride my regular mountain bike and I hustle up the hill. But when you see someone else who hasn't had the opportunity to have that fun experience, being able to have that fun experience simply by adding a little aid on there to get up the hill, that's awesome. We want more people outside. We want more people out enjoying life and having these great experiences. And by all means, let them do it, right? Like that's how it should be, right? In my opinion, of course. But I love what it's doing. It is really getting people out to the point where I have a friend whose parents are both 80 years old, have electric mountain bikes, live near the mountains, and will take 40-mile rides, 20 miles out, 20 miles back. That's amazing. They would have never done that before. And they're happier and having a great time. So kudos to electric bikes for just continuing to advance and to getting and continuing to get cheaper.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's like a classic feel good story, right? Like as people get older, they will tend to avoid going out kind of into the wilderness or places where they might have some accessibility challenges. But this is really opening doors for them, and it's great to see.
Absolutely, yeah. So, all right, D, what is your last one?
All right, so my last one, I know I've talked about. I've had a media, I've had two websites. I'm actually going to do a hardware product, and that is the Salu Spa portable hot tub.
Ooh.
So I bought this for my partner for her birthday earlier this year, and it has been fantastic. Now, my parents, when I was growing up, they had a full size hot tub, and having a full size hot tub is great at times, and it's a pain sometimes
Hmm.
because it's just when you're not using it, it's just there, it's taking up space. It can get really inconvenient, and when you need to clean it out, it can be a real chore. This thing I inflated it. The you can just plug it into a normal 110 power socket, and it runs it. It doesn't have jets like you would have in a normal hot tub, but the trade off is if you set it up, you fill it full of water, you get all the chemicals dialed in, and you decide you don't want it there anymore,
Hmm.
you can just take it down. It's fantastic. It will take it takes about a day to drain, and then you can easily deflate it and then pop it up and fold it up and throw it in the garage. But it's not just this huge piece of furniture or hole in the ground that is just there basically permanently. When my aunt removed her hot tub and my parents removed their hot tub, they nearly had to get a crane to get out of their
Oh yeah.
backyard.
Oh yeah.
So for this, it's so easy, and we've changed locations a couple times. It's so much cheaper to heat because it's a smaller amount of water that's
Uh-huh.
involved, and it's a perfect size for two or three people, maybe four people if you're going to get really close to each other. But it's so nice to have because I've wanted a hot tub for a long time, but I was like, I don't know if I want to commit the space to it in the backyard and all these kinds of things. But now it's like, all right, I set it up, I have it. If I'm feeling like I'm done with it, I can just stash it away, and it's so awesome.
That's awesome. Does it use chemicals still? Like, do you still have to put in chlorine or
Yeah,
bromide?
We still put bromide in it. You could do it to the point where, like, I'm just going to set it up for a week or so and maybe not need it as much. It's probably not that great for the internals if you're going to do that.
Mhm.
But it ultimately probably takes less bromide or chlorine because it is a smaller amount of water. If money was no object, I would still probably choose the portable hot tub. If they're the same price, I'd probably choose the inflatable portable one over the full size one just because of all the convenience and flexibility associated with
Interesting.
it.
That's awesome. Do you mind me asking like how much you paid for it?
I think I bought the bigger ones was about $500, so it's kind of for what you're getting. It's a fantastic deal. Now, from what I understand, they last. I've heard people say they last between 5 and 10 years, but for what you're getting, I still think it's a great value.
It is. I mean, I would say that if you really want to get a nice hot tub, you're probably going to spend what, like 4 G's? You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you can get a nicer full size one, I think even the cheaper full size ones are in the like $1,000 to $1,500 range at a minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, dude. And also, you know what? And hot tubs are great. Like if you've had like a long day and you feel stiff, or you go did a workout or something like that, to be able to just like relax and chill out. You know what I mean? And not have to just run a long hot
Hmm.
shower and stuff like that. That's fantastic. And also the fact that it's portable. Now, here's the real question: is it portable in the way of like, oh, I can deflate it and kind of put it in the corner, or portable in the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna go camping and I have a power source. I'm gonna bring it with me.
Well, the problem is if you're going camping with it, where are you going to get the water to fill it?
I see. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of water. I guess if you went to like someone's cabin or something and they didn't have one,
Yeah,
maybe.
you could. What I would say is it's ideal if you're going to an Airbnb
Hmm.
and you have the water source, it makes sense. Camping, not so much because you need about 250 gallons full of water, and it takes about a full day to drain.
I see. Yeah.
So it's not necessarily portable in that sense. If you're going to your friend's house in LA or in Seattle or something like that, you can absolutely deflate it, throw it in the back of a truck, drive it up there, set it up. It takes about a day to set up though.
Hmm.
Maybe about a half a day because you've got to get the water in, get it up to temperature, get your chemicals dialed in.
Hmm.
But if you're going for like 4 or 5 days or a week or longer, then it could absolutely make
That's
sense.
awesome. Well, that was a good one to wrap up the podcast. D. I have to say, like, we're for season 5, we went a little nuts, and we did so many episodes, and we just kept going and going and going. And I like that we're kind of like trimming this down to like, roughly 10 episodes. I think this season is 9. Um, but I want to talk just for a second here before we close out this season. This has been an amazing year and an amazing couple of seasons that we did. We had some amazing guests on, a lot of fun. And we're doing the same thing for next year. It's going to be slightly different in the sense that, we're going to be kind of referencing all of our links, and anything else that we figure out is going to be on YouTube instead. And we're going to start uploading the podcast to YouTube, not necessarily video right away, but we're going to start with audio, because now we have followers around the world, and we think that they would really appreciate being able to just go to YouTube and listen to them when they want to, especially when they're at work and stuff. Um, and we also going to have some really cool guests. So we reached out to some friends in different spaces. We're not going to say where they are, what they're doing yet. We'll make that a surprise for everyone. We're going to have different conversations about different things that we find to be super compelling and interesting. So I hope everyone stays connected and continues to come back and listen to us. Like I said, we have a following around the world. We really enjoy that. And we really appreciate everybody who continuously listens every single week and also shares this podcast with their friends. Dee and I do this because we love it. We don't make any money doing this. We just love talking tech. We love kind of like debating things because our perspective is very different. We research for a living, which meaning we go very deep on topics, and then we help our customers make really big decisions. And because of that, our brains think differently. They see a lot of details, but they also try to see the bigger and larger landscape so we can make big strategic decisions. So we do this because we want to share a lot of that with you, and hopefully that knowledge gets out. So if you have friends, family that you think would love this podcast, please, you know, uh, let them know about it. Otherwise, thank you so much. And we will see you all next year and in our next season. Have a good one. Happy holidays.